Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. This is Vlogmas in July 2022, day 21. So we're working on the polyester quilt as a Throwback Thursday series. So if you want to see how to make a quilt sandwich out of this quilt, please stay tuned. Enjoying the journey of this polyester quilt being put together. I'm certainly enjoying revisiting it and sharing it with you for this Vlogmas in July. In this particular video, you're going to see how I put the borders around those polyester panels, specifically around one of the panels this week, and I will link the second video so you can go and check out that panel as well, how I put the borders around that one. So I hope that you enjoy this part of the process, putting on the borders. You've seen the preview of the panels, you've seen me choose the fabrics, and now you get to see these fabrics turn into borders on this quilt. So let me know in the comments what you think. Some of you have already gone through and seen the whole quilt being made, and I appreciate that. If you haven't made it there, that's perfectly fine. For those of you who are new to my channel, this polyester quilt is one that was started from panels that my late grandmother made. She put together two panels, one that's mostly like browns and beiges and oranges, and one that's a little bit brighter with blues and greens and white. So if you go back to the other videos in this in the Throwback series, you can see how this quilt started, and then you can join this video. I hope that you learn from this process and that you can grow as a quilter, sewer, crafter to try something new. Thank you in advance for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. This is the panel that I've been working with for the last few weeks. It's one of the panels of the two that my grandmother made. There's actually a third one, but I'm not going to put it in this quilt. I'm going to wait and put it in a separate project. But I've already, I've washed it and I've stabilized it with some Decor Bond stabilizer, and I have cut off the edges, so now we have some straight edges. There were some questions about what I'm going to do with the leftovers. This is about how much was left over. I don't know if you can see it. Let me take it a little bit closer. These are the pieces that were left over. And this is from both sides of the quilt. So like you can see this white and orange and this blue. These are from the Esther side. But somebody asked if I was going to put it in the binding or if I was going to like make some other pieces and add them on, stuff like that. I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to save this because there's another project that I think these pieces will be perfect for. So for now, they just go to the side. And I have, now this thing I think is ready to have the pieces put on the side. Let's take a close look at my pattern so that we can see what my next steps are. This is the poly side of my quilt right here, the pattern that I drew out. And I'll put a link to the video where I show how I created this pattern. I've marked off the center panel. So this is Grandma's panel right here. And then I'm actually going to put 6 sections around it. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the top is 1, 5, and the bottom is 6. My challenge now is that in my design, the top line and the bottom line are straight across, but in real life, they're kind of angled. So I don't know exactly what that's going to do for my fabric, so I'm interested to see what's going to happen. But I think I am going to go ahead and stitch the panels exactly the sizes they are. Right now, 2 inches is 1 square. So you can see like this is going to be a pretty large panel or section. This is going to be a pretty large section, and so on. And I'm going to keep those measurements the same. I went ahead and measured the finished size of the block right now. Let me see if you can see it here. Let's see. Okay, so I wrote it right here. It's really small, and okay, so it's 28.5 inches horizontally, and then the left side is 60.5 inches, and the right side is 66 inches. So I'm gonna be these are the measurements that I'm looking at as far as when I put this whole thing together. But right now I'm gonna keep my panels or my sections. I'm gonna go with the sizes that I have here. So like this first one, this purple, it's 8.5. No, it's not. It's 16.5 by 8.5. So that's the size rectangle I'm going to make, even though it might not match up with the size of this edge of the panel. Because I think if I start there and I just make it the size that it is, then it'll be easier to kind of fudge around later. So I'm going to do the left side, then the right side, and then I'll determine how to piece those and add them to the middle section. Let's get started with that. I have my fabric pressed here on either side of me. This is most of the pieces, and then on this side I just have the 3 that I'm about to use right now. I have my rulers. I have 2 rulers. My 6 by 24 and then my 15-inch square. I don't know exactly which ones I'm going to need yet. I also have my huge cutting mat, and I'm actually going to probably use some of the lines on the cutting mat to help me too, because some of my pieces are going to be wider than both of my rulers. So I'm actually going to start, even though this is a larger section, I'm actually going to start with just the first 3 pieces. And probably what I should do, and I think I will do, is go through each little piece and go ahead and mark the measurements so that it'll be easier for me when I'm cutting. But I'm going to go ahead and start with this purple here, and it is 16.5 by 8.5 rectangle. So I pulled this fabric here, and since I've recently started saving selvages, actually I don't know if I want to save this selvage because it's very generic. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it off, and I'll decide later if I'm going to save it. And I'm just lining up the lines on the ruler here. I'm a little bit concerned because these pieces are so big that I'm going to have a lot of waste. But not really waste, it'll just be a lot of small pieces that I can put into other projects. Next, I'm going to cut the 16.5 mark. I have the fabric lined up on the bottom line of my ruler, of my mat. So next I'm going to go ahead and go for the 16.5. So the block on my pattern, it's actually squares, but I have to add a 1/2 inch on both sides for the seam allowance. So I'm adding halves because for the seam allowances, let's count this off: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 and a half. Okay, and I'm just lining it up. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Just making sure, and then I'm going to find the corresponding line up at the top. Here. And there we go. So that's that rectangle. And then I'm going to turn it and get my 8.5. So I'm going to put this line here. Okay. And then I'm going to count over 8.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and a half. So it's on the 11.5 mark. Okay. So that's that. This is the first rectangle, and it's actually going to be at the top of my little section. So I'm going to push this one to the side, And then I'll cut the other ones. I have to cut a light brown and then an off-white for this little section. And then for the bottom part of this section, it's going to be a green, a dark brown, and a light brown. So I may go ahead and cut both the light browns right now, and then I'll cut those other two later. So I'll do that, and then I'll show you what it's going to look like. Here are my 6 pieces that I've already cut. Let me show you where it is in the pattern. It's right here, this section. Now what I decided to do was, as I cut a piece, I went ahead and put a check mark on it. I have the other pieces that I cut, because sometimes, like for example, with this off-white, if I was going to cut a 6.5 inch strip, there may be some other pieces that were also 6.5 inches. And so I went ahead and cut all of those pieces. When I got them together, I labeled them. I just took a legal pad and I scribbled the measurements on it, and I put a pin through it. And so I have several different colors. I did the off-white, I did the light brown. This is my dark brown, and then I did some of the green here. And then I also did a little bit more planning and decided where I have more than one fabric, like for the off-white, I actually have that TV fabric and all that. So I decided where those would be, because there's some places that I knew I didn't want them. And so this is the little section that I have now. The next step is going to be to start to stitch this together. So I'm going to start with 2 that are joined, since it'll be these 2 joined to this, and then these 2 joined to this. So first I'm going to do the 2 that have to go together, and then I'll join them to the smaller units, and then I'll put both of these together. So let me do that, and I'll show you what it looks like. This section is now finished. It's really cool. And what's crazy is that the amount of time that it took to stitch it together was like nothing compared to what it took to cut it out. So that's a very interesting thing. Let me show you quickly how it's pressed. I pressed for the 2 sections. I pressed toward the dark side, and the same at the bottom. Make sure you can see that. Yeah, so the same right here, and pressing to the dark here. And then when there was a long side, I pressed to the long side. For this middle seam, I just pressed it toward the darker. I kind of forced it to go, but it was okay. It didn't fight too much. I want to put it up next to the panel so we can get some idea how it's going to look. This is just the top left, so there's still a piece that needs to go under it. And there will be a piece that goes above it as well. But let me put this here, and then I'll grab the panel. And put it next to it. I have to make sure that I have the correct side on top. It's all, for me, it's this lighter brown. That's the top seam. And I'm moving it back just so I can spread out the panel here. So not bad. Now all I have to do is, I'm going to make the side panels next. So I'm going to make this bottom left, then the 2 rights, and then I'll figure out how to put those together. I have both sides of the border panels done. So you can see the left side over on the left, of course, and then the right side is on the right. If I zoom in, I'm going to zoom in down here at the bottom. You'll notice that the fabric is, the panel that I added, it's a little bit longer than the panel that my grandma made, and you can see it right in there. So my plan is, because I'm going to have some weird angles, my plan is right now, first, I'm going to stitch this short side down so I'll have an idea where that straight line is going to be. And then when it's time for me to add the right side, I'm actually going to make it a little bit longer. I'm going to add a piece at both the top and the bottom of this so that it can, hopefully I'll have a nice line that I can cut. And then when I get ready to add the top and bottom, they're going to be a little bit off kilter because of that angle. And what I plan to do is go ahead and make those panels a little bit longer and wider so that I can cut some nice right angles and have a good rectangle when I'm done. So let me start by stitching the left side down, and then I'll show you what that looks like. I have the left side of the border fabric sewn on, and then for the right side, I added a piece here at the top. I added purple at the top and at the bottom. And so I'm going to sew these on, and then I'm going to see how to cut it. But I want to show you, I'll show you the panels after they're sewn, and then we'll figure out how to cut them together. I have my straight lines cut on my panels, and I've just gone ahead and laid out my blocks for the top and the bottom sections of this quilt. And one of my concerns is that with these angles, that maybe these sections won't be long enough. Now, I know that when we look at it, we can see, like if we look at the top, I'm zooming in. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. We can see that we have a little bit of overhang. So I need to make sure that it's not going to get caught in the seam allowance. You can see that overhang up at the top, and then it appears also at the bottom down here, where you can see that it looks like it's going to hang over a little bit more. What I'm going to do now is go ahead and stitch these sections together and then see if it's going to be long enough, because I'm going to have to make some cuts so that I can get my nice rectangle. So let's stitch these together, and then if they're not quite long enough, I'll have to add a couple of pieces of fabric maybe to lengthen them. I have the top and bottom panel sewn together, and it's about time for me to sew them, to attach them actually to the quilt top. Now, I have a little bit of wiggle room here on either side of the top, but my plan is to, after I get this step done, I'm going to use these side borders, like this straight line. This is gonna be my line going up, and I'm just gonna cut, hopefully, at that point on either side. What I'm gonna do before I do that is I'm gonna still add another strip here at one end of the top and the bottom, because with the way this is lying, I'm concerned that it's gonna stretch out as I stitch this along. So I just want to have enough room on one end for these cuts to make sure that my angle is going to be correct, and then I'll have enough fabric to get all the way through the angle. So before I attach the top and bottom to this quilt top, I'm going to add on my extra piece, and I have one down there as well. Add those on, then I'll stitch this together, and hopefully we can just cut along those vertical lines to get our sides nice and even. Here is where we are so far. This is the finished quilt top, hopefully soon. My major concerns are the same concerns that I've had the whole time, that one side is longer than the other and it makes the angles be all weird. But I'm going to choose a point, like I'm going to start with the side that I think is the straightest, and then I think I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. My first step is I'm going to call this side, this is my straight edge right here on the left. So I'm going to be making everything even as it relates to this left side. My first step is going to be just to line up a ruler here, cut off the edge of the top and then the edge of the bottom, and then I'll show you how I'm going to handle the other side by basically just cheating. At this point in the process, I will admit I'm a little bit anxious. My nerves are I'm a little shaky because I feel like I don't know what else to do yet. So I'm going to try to make this thing a true rectangle. I know that this polyester is it's just going to do its thing. So I'm going to try my best to line up the cotton as much as possible in hopes that I can get a real rectangle. What I've done is I've taken my straight edge that I created by cutting along the left side, and I've lined up I've basically just folded the top in half, and I'm going to line up with this straight edge and cut the other part off in hopes that I will have two straight sides, because that's the only way I can think of to get something close to that. And then I'm going to do the same thing I have across the bottom here and across the top. I'm going to just line it up and do my best to get a straight line that goes all the way across, because it'll get rid of some of those angles. I really don't know if this is going to work. I'm just basically doing what I know to do and hoping for the best. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. Because I still have the power of quilting to sort of make it work. So right now I'm going to cut these, and I think I'll do it on camera. I'll speed it up so you can see me cutting, and then I'll lay it out, and hopefully we will have a real live rectangle. So here I go. Well, here it is. It's mostly rectangular, so I think it's going to work. I mean, really, it doesn't have a choice but to work. I think I'm done with it for right now. The measurements are about 59 horizontal, 85.5 vertical. So it's going to be a nice sized quilt. I need to think about if I'm going to make the binding, and if I do, what I'll make that out of. But I will let you know about that. There was a little bit of, at the top and bottom, it's not completely straight. I'm not 100% sure about the sides either, but I do like the way that it's turned out so far. I like the combination of the fabrics. I think they look nice together, especially on camera. And I mean, it's going to work. It doesn't have a choice but to work. I'm ready to see kind of what the back is going to look like, what the Esther side is going to look like. But I'm pleased with Poly. I'm glad that I could use up some of my scraps for this side, and I'm excited about trying more scraps for the other side. If you have any questions about this process, you can see the previous videos, or you can leave them in the comments below. Thumbs up this video, share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!